Israel has begun its ground invasion of the Gaza Strip, while it is pit against the United States over a humanitarian crisis that is growing. On to the first story. Germany has begun its crackdown on pro-Palestinian protests in the country, outlawing events by Sam Adun and calling for the dissolution of future pro-Palestinian protests throughout the country. Germany is home to one of the largest Palestinian diasporas in Europe, and since the war began on October 7th, Germany has seen multiple pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protests all around the country. A statement by Olaf Scholz asserted that members of Sam Adun celebrated the October 7th attack and called for this group to be completely dissolved. The protests have triggered conversations in Germany about the right to assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of protest, as well as immigration, with a conversation on immigration noting the large Palestinian population. Scholz even made comments recently stating that, quote, "too many have come in," unquote, and, quote, "we must finally deport on a grand scale." Further inflaming this debate was a decision by a German school to ban the wearing of the kippah, leading to debate within Germany on the legality of that ruling. While many of the pro-Palestinian protests throughout Germany have been peaceful, some have led to violence, with some leading to clashes with police and clashes with pro-Israeli protests. Germany's history has become a topic of conversation when trying to contextualize its decisions here with regard to pro-Palestinian groups and protests, as the protests themselves have sparked fears of anti-Semitism throughout the country. On the flip side, there are also concerns that these decisions might lead to more Islamophobia within the country. Regardless, and at least in the case of Germany, it's important to remember their history to contextualize why the government would make certain decisions, obviously weary of committing anti-Semitism and allowing anti-Semitism to spread throughout the country. Next story. The US is investing $553 million in a brand new shipping terminal in the Sri Lankan port of Colombo. This matters because it not only increases the presence of the US in the Indian Ocean, it also increases US influence in Sri Lanka, which has itself become a battleground between the United States, India, and China. And we've already discussed this battleground in another video, so if you want to learn more about that, then check that out. Since 2021, the Port of Colombo has operated at near full capacity, and it services countries ranging from Eastern and Southern Asia, Eastern Africa, and the Middle East. But operation at near capacity has put a significant amount of strain on Sri Lanka. This also is not the first investment by the United States into the Port of Colombo, with a $1.4 billion initial investment and what's anticipated to be a $20 million total investment. The growth of US influence in the country matters too, with the Sri Lankan economy stagnating significantly recently, dropping almost 8% in 2022 and another 8% so far in 2023. Next story. Both Russia and Ukraine continue separate offensives. Russia has spent the past several weeks assaulting the Ukrainian stronghold of Avdiivka, which has allowed Ukraine to strike Russian targets within the city of Donetsk since Russia annexed that city back in 2014. Meanwhile, Ukraine has continued to apply pressure around the city of Bakhmut, and there's also evidence suggesting that Ukraine has managed to create a bridgehead across the Dnieper River and has actually begun ferrying heavy weapons and heavy equipment across that river. The ferrying of heavy equipment means that Ukraine might be setting the battlefield for future operations in the Kherson area. The conversation has already begun on whether or not Ukraine's counteroffensive in 2023 was a failure. And while it undoubtedly thus far has failed to achieve even its minimum objectives, it might be too early to assess whether it was a complete and total failure until we can assess what actions and counteractions take place throughout the rest of this year and early next year that might be a result of Ukraine's counteroffensive. Additionally, Russia appears to be preparing for another round of offensives, with the beginning of that offensive evidencing itself around the city of Avdiivka. However, this Russian offensive could span to other areas along the front lines. Thus far in this conflict, Ukraine has managed to achieve parity in many areas with Russian forces, where the battle lines really have not changed hands in a significant fashion since Ukraine liberated Kherson. However, this parity and this lack of change in the battle lines has led to the word stalemate entering the Western lexicon when assessing this conflict. Just the achievement of parity with the Russian military is a huge achievement for the Ukrainian military. However, it's not likely to end the war anytime soon. And we have talked extensively about this conflict on this channel, so if you'd like to learn more, then check out some of those videos as well. Next story. The US and Israel remain at odds over the sending of humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza. Hi, editor Caleb here. So So I filmed this video and then I saw news immediately as I started editing that Israel had agreed to a daily 4-hour ceasefire in the northern part of Gaza City. So that actually provides some relief here for the humanitarian crisis, but there is kind of like a logistics aspect to, does this mean that humanitarian aid will actually start making into the Gaza Strip? How will aid be dispersed? How, will civilians be able to gain access to that aid if that is on the opposite end of the Gaza Strip from where they're being told to go, and how the IDF facilitate the distribution of this aid? So there's definitely some more to research, but we will be following up on this next week. Israel launched a complete siege of Gaza following the October 7th attacks and has prevented any movement of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Israel has cited intelligence that Hamas has looted and pilfered the humanitarian aid and used that to aid its fighters. Aid groups, however, have been critical of Israel's decision, citing that it puts Palestinian people at risk, and it further worsens an already terrible humanitarian crisis. To illustrate how bad this is, consider the size of Gaza Strip, which is 25 miles long and 3.7 miles in the northern area and 7.5 miles wide in the southern area. Inside the small area lives 2.3 million people, making this the 5th most densely populated area in the world. Israel is currently trying to get civilians to evacuate Gaza City in the north and move down to the south. However, there simply is not the infrastructure to support the entire population of 2.3 million people, especially considering that this is still well within the active war zone. At the same time, neighboring Egypt has closed its borders to Gaza, so there's really nowhere for these people to go. I've included a link to an article which lists out some charities for anyone that's interested in that, especially once humanitarian aid is finally able to start reaching Palestinian people. Next story, expanding on the last one, Israel has surrounded Gaza City and has begun operations inside the city of Gaza. This week, the IDF successfully reached the coastline along the southern edge of Gaza City, cutting off Gaza City from the rest of the Strip. The IDF has also begun movement inside the city along the coastline, moving south along Al-Rashid Street and to the northeast along Beit Hanun. Israel has also created an evacuation route for Palestinians to flee the city to the southern end of the Strip along Salah Eden Street. The IDF's air campaign in Gaza City has become a massive source of controversy throughout this conflict so far, and it should be noted that thus far we've barely seen anything from the ground invasion, which will likely increasingly become more violent, costly, and controversial as time goes on, especially as the IDF moves deeper into Gaza City. This could be made worse even if civilians are unsuccessful in being evacuated from the city itself. Urban warfare is extremely difficult and deadly. To contextualize how massive this battle against Hamas will be in Gaza City, let's look at the Battle of Mosul in Iraq. During the war against ISIS, Iraq and its coalition launched an attack on the ISIS stronghold of Mosul. The coalition attacked with a force of over 100,000 fighters against an ISIS defense of around 12,000 fighters. Despite this massive disparity in size and strength, ISIS still managed to hold out for around 9 months, with a battle raging from October 2016 to July 2017. Tens of thousands of people were killed and wounded in this battle. Israel is attacking Gaza City with over 100,000 fighters, while Hamas is believed to have somewhere around 30,000 fighters themselves. Hamas also has a massive tunnel network below the Gaza Strip, which allows it the ability to strike the IDF anywhere within the Gaza Strip and seek refuge underground. Simply put, we haven't seen something that could be this massive since potentially World War II, and it's incredibly difficult to predict where this battle could go. We've already discussed on this channel extensively about this conflict and the different complexities about this war, so if you would like more information about that, check out this playlist here. Like this video if you found this helpful or informative, and if you like this format, let me know down in the video comments, as well as any news items that you found interesting. Until next time.